ever remember him fighting or playing around or being noisy or anything. And I remember him very clearly going off on that train on the 8:21. And my mother always used to stand by the door, or by the window, by the window she stood and waved to him when the train went by, so she knew that he'd got onto it.
Mm. It was so near, wasn't it? I remember when Donald and when I came to your house, during our last term at the Dulwich College Prep, we would whistle out of the window, and Ada, your wall-eyed maid of all work,
yes,
would wave, and then she would put the macaroni cheese on, so that it was already cooling on the plate by the time we got in.
Oh yes, well, it was exactly that way. And of course the other way round, when he went to school, he would leave the house soon, 8:15. He would run around to the station, he would get onto the train, and my mother would take up her stance at the window to wave to him as he went by. Of course, if he didn't wave, I mean, that would have been a catastrophe. She would have known he wasn't on the train. Because she was a very nervous lady.
Oh, was she?
Oh yes, she was excitable, she was nervous. She worried about everything and everybody, particularly about her children, whom she absolutely idolized.
Of course, she was yanked out of her milieu, out of her country.
Completely. As my father once said rather picturesquely that this was a flower that he'd picked from somewhere in the East and brought back to England, and that she never really fitted in. But she was devoted to us.
She was very pretty.
She was lovely. Well, in fact, I remember one of my father's friends, Cedric Lover, saying she was the most beautiful woman he ever met. I don't know whether he said that just to please me. I think he probably meant it.
This is Donald playing one of his favourite tunes. It's a lullaby he heard just once, 44 years ago, on the Albanian border of Greece. I play it now because, although it's a Greek tune, it's also very Slavonic in cut, so it combines two sides of Donald, and it also introduces a conversation with him.
Where the music comes from.
Oh, you mean out of me, you mean?
Yes.
How does it come? Oh, well, I have a sort of glib answer, John, that when I put my hands on the keyboard, it emerges. And in fact, I reckon it to be a tactile reaction in sound.
Yes. But in the first place, when you were a child.
Oh, well. In the first place, when I was a child, even that applies. The first time I touched the keyboard, I was playing things that seemed to make great sense. Of course, it's true that my mother was singing me Russian folk songs, and my father was there beavering away with his four-hand piano playing. So I suppose you could say the child was imitating his parents, and we were hearing music, mostly Russian music. So it came out of imitation. But whether there's some other source or founded, I couldn't tell you. It certainly feels tactile now.
There was no popular music in your life at all then. I remember sometimes I would play you Fats Waller or Art Tatum or something, but you weren't really interested, were you? Except from the virtuoso point of view.
Yes, how did I miss that? I mean, I think we began to hear early radio when it was coming up, and the comedies and things, but there was very little, and I think my father and, my austere Uncle Alfred, who we also knew well, they rather frowned on that sort of thing. They thought it was wrong. It was not what St. Petersburg intelligentsia were doing. It was sort of naughty music.
Playing Art Tatum is wrong.
It's wrong.
Like eating people.
It was. Do you think the Russians are exceptionally piano-minded? I have rather fallen into the habit of saying that I'm a piano player because Russian people just love it. But
yes,
they do, don't they?
Certainly they seem to love duets, because when I went to Leningrad not long ago, I found all sorts of curious things arranged for one piano, 4 hands, that I've never seen here.
Yeah.
I mean, things like Honegger symphonies and God knows what.
That's right. They must have a feeling for it, and then these virtuoso pianists seem to turn up from among them.
Can you dive into your memories and suggest a piece that you were tremendously fond of when you were a schoolboy? Perhaps a bit of Russian music, I don't know.
Oh, well, I've mentioned Rachmaninoff for that Etude Tableau. That made a tremendous, the B minor one. Now, that turned my career upside down because I was destined to play it. I knew that one day, with all the piano playing I had at Westminster and then Oxford, by that time I was doing other things, I was determined to play this.
Terribly difficult.
Well, I couldn't make it up. I never did it.
Really?
I didn't. I reached the point when I gave almost a term of my life to playing it, and it gradually escaped me. And that proved to me that I was never going to play even the music that I really loved. And that, I think, was how I knew I was going to be a composer. Was the only way round this dilemma was to invent the music that I could play. I was defeated on the very level where I set myself. And I don't know what makes people write. You said, where does the tune come from? It could be it's a sense of defeat. You say, all right, I'll do it my way. I'll do it my way. I get out the tune, get the thing out. Lyric on the piano, some emotion, bit of memory somewhere. Out comes the first song.
And did you have a struggle, as I did, not that it's important in my case, with the classical stuff? I mean, was there a time when you ever thought, oh, Beethoven is a pretty fair old bore?
Terrible, my letter. Awful. That he's the very one. He turned me off, that man. And you know what? It was the same thing. I tried the Beethoven third piano concerto at school when they said, oh, Donald, quite a pianist. Swann, they called him, not Donald. So I got the whole thing, half of it to play at a school concert. Forgot it halfway through. And I never forgave the old man. I said, he'd done me. Because they made him into a headline. He's still a headline, and he comes on top of your music book, Beethoven.
Yeah.
I thought, well, up you, Beethoven. I'm not going to do me. I'm not going to sit there with the establishment, sitting on top of me. And it's taken me 50 years to forgive him. I'm still worried about him, but of late I thought, don't be silly, Twitter, can't you relax? It's all over. But he really worried me.
Have you ever heard Peter Ustinov tell the story that when he was at Westminster,
Yeah.
he was there at the same time?
He was,
wasn't
yeah.
And one time, in very, very early days when he was there, they said, who is the greatest composer?
Yeah.
And he said, Mozart. And he said, no, the correct answer is Beethoven.
Oh!
And go to the bottom of the class for swanking.
Oh! Oh, that's lovely, isn't it? Oh, it's splendid.
Do you remember Ustinov at school?
Yes, I do. He took in a lot of the school. His mind was already going round. He got these fascinating relatives. And I think he was getting interested in drama. And some of that I hadn't yet latched into at all.
You were both very absent-minded characters. I mean, I only met Ustinov when he was, 22 or 3.
Oh, yeah.
But it seemed to me that he had something in common with you, not only the Russian thing, very sort of absent-minded and hopeless.
Yeah.
Somebody described himself the other day as a technophobe.
Oh, that's a nice phrase. That's great.
In other words, he couldn't deal with, a fountain pen or something like that. He was all over ink and everything else. Very awkward person.
Yes.
But you didn't develop really any friendship
no,
with him?
Unfortunately not. I have, worked just occasionally with him much later, and we always shake hands and remember. And I remember that he told me that the Unknown Soldier and his wife, a most marvellous, moving play. One of the central characters is based on our headmaster, who used to beat people sometimes and gave him such a sick feeling about warfare and violence. He put him straight into a play. Yeah. He's got these wonderful liberal international ideas, which I really so wholeheartedly respect.
You said in your book, talking of beating, that your father had a fear and horror of beating.
He did.
And that you spent quite some time trying to evade it.
I did. I succeeded. But I think it's a bit cowardly, really. I mean, there was I, shying away from the situation that could lead to the beating. Whereas the good old brave public schoolboy goes in, bum forward. I don't know, it wasn't too good, John.
It does affect one, I think, this feeling of trying to avoid it or getting it.
Or getting it. I think I really abhor it. I'm sure it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's too psychologically damaging.
Do you think that it has anything to do with your being conscientious?
It does. I think it was the beginning of a great tension and a great search inside me for a culture or a way of life which avoided the use of physical violence. Mm. Now you may say, well, that's the wrong way to enter a conscience position. But it was one of them. And I think the world was, when we were youngsters, was increasingly violent. I mean, it was going on all round, wasn't it? The beginnings of the Anschluss. And these are very, very dark times. And I don't think it's surprising that some boys said, no violence, I'm not going to stand for it. And my little bit of adolescent rebellion was against beating and bullies. Didn't like them. Mm.
And in fact, it led you into pastures in a way, didn't it? I mean, by taking you to Egypt and Greece, which really did change your life, didn't it?
Absolutely. So in a very strange way, this type of reaction against physical violence, or even the horror of the Civil War that had totally, transformed my parents' life and made them exiles, led me, with the help of the Quaker ambulance unit, to Greece and indeed Greek music, and the sort of fertilization of the tune.
Suddenly the 5/8 and the 7/8
suddenly came out of a little kaik.
Yeah. And it's become so much a part of your musical language that it comes out completely natural. It never sounds forced.
No, I think I adopted it. It adopted me. My mother, comes from a latitude of that type, a warm Caucasian town of Baku. And I think Greek music has some of this oriental wobbliness.
A captivating bit of East European wobbliness, more of it later. Making this programme involved quite a London odyssey to talk to various people, Brentford, Highgate, Battersea, and Herne Hill to see Sidney Carter, folkman, writer of such differing numbers as Lord of the Dance and that Ballad of the Sewers Down Below. Sidney said about Donald,
I met him in the Friends ambulance unit, which I was in during the war, and so was he. I met him actually in Hampstead first, but didn't register him at all then. I met him more so in Greece, where we were both working in a refugee camp, a Greek refugee camp near Gaza, New Surat. There I saw a lot of him.
First impression?
First impression? Well, I don't know. He had a guitar in those days, which I rather envied him, because I couldn't play it. And he could entertain people with it, including some of the rather more attractive people in the camp. At least I thought so. I couldn't. I thought, I wish I could do that. But he was very generous and sort of learned over Greek. He learned some Greek, and he was very useful at all that. As he did, he at Oxford later, he did Greek and Russian, didn't he?
Yeah. Funny-looking bloke.
Yes. Interesting. He's got these eyebrows that go up like a Mephistopheles. And once I saw him put on a top hat. And with this top hat and these eyebrows, he looked like a sort of 19th century diabolical character, extraordinary, very funny. This was at the Quaker place in America. He got this top hat and waved on him. Oh my goodness, there's Diaghilev, there's something there. It's really quite extraordinary. And he's hardly changed at all, his face. In all these years since I've known him, which was how many? 40, what is it now, 91, about 50.
Yes. All I remember that's changed really is he wore sort of wired spectacles.
Oh.
Horrible looking things when he was a kid.
Yes.
Sort of encircling his ears with them.
He's always had them, more or less, hasn't he? The spectacles for something. It's part of his face. If you remove that, he's not there. Not the Swann you know.
No.
And he had this strange laugh always, too, which you were at school with him.
Yes.
Had it, yes. Still there. And a kind of way of speaking, which is more like Woodhouse, and a choice of words sometimes, which is very interesting. He's more like a Woodhouse character than anyone I've ever met, as far as speech goes.
I hadn't thought about that.
And yeah, quite a felicity in words sometimes, which
yes.
Woodhouse-housian.
Yes, yes. Did you ever hear him preach? That famous sermon at St. Paul's. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't. I can't imagine him preaching would be any different from him talking. What did he preach about?
I don't know. He always says that he asked Flanders for a text.
Mm-hmm.
And Flanders said, all men are cast in the same mould.
Some are mouldier than others. Yes, I remember that, yes.
You've collaborated with him actually in songs, haven't you?
Well, in many curious ways I have, yes. I suppose it arose out of Greece, really, because I first collaborated in this way. I think when he was doing reviews with Michael Flanders, he certainly thought it'd been organised to have a lot of the Greek songs translated and do them with people dancing around or something. He did. And various friends of his or mine who'd been in Greece did it. I came rather late like that. Befana at the Three Wise Men, and found it was too late to join in this. But then I wrote something quite different, a sort of Irish ballad, which he liked, and I had a sort of vague tune in it in my mind. I gave up. He wrote one that worked well, The Youth of the Heart, and it was put into a review.
When I was a young man, I hadn't a penny. When shall we marry, my Molly would say. But I was a wise man and said to my darling, love that is true love will not fade away. Oh, the youth of the heart and the dew in the morning. You wake and they've left you without any warning. I went to America looking for money. I worked all the day and I slept all alone. The sweet silver dollars I saved for my darling, to clothe her in satin and make her my own. Oh, the youth of the heart and the dew in the morning. You wake and they've left you without any warning. I came back to Ireland, my pockets a jingle, and the wedding bells rang as I came down the street. Oh, where is the colleen I've come back to marry? I asked the first neighbour I happened to meet. Oh, the youth of the heart and the dew in the morning. You wake and they've left you without any warning. Your love has grown weary of keeping her kisses and learning a song that will never be sung. This morning your Molly has married another, a penniless man with a heart that is young. Oh, the youth of the heart and the dew in the morning. You wake and they've left you without any warning. So all you young lovers all ready to marry, remember my story and mind what I say. For I was a wise man, and now I am sorry. The wisdom of winter is madness in May. Oh, the youth of the heart and the dew in the morning. You wake and they've left you without any warning.
Youth of the Heart. Words Carter, music Swann. After the Hat partnership ended in 1967, Donald had various concert groups of singers, some concentrating on his religious works, others more secular, sometimes mixed. The soprano Heather Kay was part of one of them.
We were just called the Donald Swann Singers at that time.
I see. And there were what, 5, 6, 7 of you?
Five of us. Ginny Broadbent, who I mentioned, was the mezzo. Kathy Martin was the soprano, and my brother Brian Kay was the bass, and Alistair Thompson, his friend, from the King Singers was the tenor. So we were a very cosy, friendly bunch.
And this worked on and off for...
Yes, it worked on and off. Brian and Alistair got very busy with the King Singers, and so they were replaced by Richard Day Lewis and Roger Cleverton after about a year, in fact. And that was the real group that stayed together for them the following 10 years.
What, you did odd gigs?
Yes, we did. And we had the Between the Bars, which was the main production that we did with Donald, which was a stage show. Between the Bars, well, it was a choral autobiography of his book, The Space Between the Bars. And it took a review form. Basically, Donald used to stand there and spout out his life story every night when we did it, and we used to intersperse it with musical items, going all through his life, right from his rather unorthodox Russian beginnings through his period in Greece, and then at Westminster School, and so on, all the way through until the end of the Drop of the Hat.
Why did it come to an end then?
The show? Well, we did it for 10 years. I mean, we flogged around most of the provincial theatres, and it's gone very well. It was a very successful little show, great fun to do, and always well received by the critics. I think it was very painful for Donald, actually, to stand up every night and talk about his life. He used to get a bit sidetracked on occasions when he was feeling a bit low. It's very hard, I would think.
He's a very up and down chap, isn't he?
Yes, he's very up and down. He got very melancholy on occasions. And especially in the second half of the show, when he was really talking about his faith and everything, it sometimes did get a bit difficult and heavy, and he went off the point. But in the end, I think he was probably right to stop it when he did. We were all furious because we loved it. You know, it was the best thing we ever did, because we knew the show inside out, and it was fun, and we all loved being together, and it was very successful. And we thought he was mad in a lot of ways, selfish ways, that he stopped.
Well, that's the story of his life, isn't it?
You said it.
Do you find him inspiring?
Oh, yes, enormously. Enormously. Because he wrote super stuff for singers. I mean, he knew, well, the more he knew us, the more he wrote round our own individual voices. And he was a dream to sing with, because he was such a fabulous accompanist. And yes, he inspired, of course he did. We always wanted to do well for him, because it was a happy show, and he made us feel happy.
Tell me about the Requiem for the Living.
It's a dramatic cantata with the words by C.D. Lewis, as I'm sure you know, who thought that the living are entitled to rest in peace as well as the dead. That was the thinking behind it. And the text was very much against nuclear weapons, and really to say, look, we've got this beautiful world, let's use it and to advantage.
A green work.
A green work indeed, ahead of its time. And Donald set it to music very beautifully, I think. A lot of marvellous passages, and it had a lot of spiritual merriment, if I may use that expression, in it, and lots of different rhythms to keep the thing alive and on its toes. I mean, the offertorium, for instance, is in Greek 7/8 rhythm.
O God, in whom we half believe, or not believe, or pray to like importunate children tugging us leave, whether man's need created you, or his creation seed from you, our creeds have overshaded you with terror, pain, and grief. Our creeds have overshaded you with terror, pain, and grief.
Do you feel you've had a fulfilled life so far?
Well, thanks to the rebirth, I do, John, yes. I don't regret the passing of Drop of a Hat now at all. I realise it was inevitable. And I'm 67 now, so I've had some quite good times as a different style composer. I've set many songs with different lyrics, writers. A whole lot of them are not alive, but that makes it calmer almost, because I could work with them in absente.
But you've never had the success so far that you have with Drop of a Hat, but I suppose that's inevitable?
I should think it's probably inevitable. I reckon I've never had the exposure. I can get a concert or two with my lyric songs and all my operas and my cantatas, and they could be quite regular, you know, a month there, another month somewhere else. But I mean, I reckon a lot of the major acceptance of the Flanders and Swann material is simply because it's been very well and truly published and available, and it keeps returning. So I got a sort of feeling that if I ever got recorded and played on every other side, that thing will come along quite smoothly, and somebody might say, well, look, who cares about Sullivan? You know, it's Donald Swann, not too bad. I don't think I'm very high in the level of all this pecking order, but the acceptance might come quite readily. Give me another 100 years or so. Do you know, may I go back to Michael? I think had he lived, we might have restarted Drop of a Hat.
Really?
We even had a title which was Hat Trick, which had been the third act show. And we had a few songs like Singing in the Lifeboat. Or we might have finished the Odyssey. You know, we wanted to do a musical about the Odyssey. And got some beautiful songs like Circe, Circe, please have mercy, depigify my crew. Depigify my crew, it's gorgeous. And the song for the three-headed dog, Cerberus. I mean, we had these fragments, but we hadn't got the quiet and the peace. But I think, you know, we have to imagine that if he hadn't been stricken, you know, it might have revived, and he might have been a very brilliant new style writer. Now we associate him with his own time.
Yeah.
Well, that just about wraps up the show. The Schwannengesang and the Flanders Gesang. I've been immersed in this work for a month on and off, and I must say the material really stands up. I've laughed and laughed, though I've heard all the jokes before, and I've marvelled at the timing, the quality, and the expertise of everything that Flanders did. Swann pleases me in the same way that Poulenc and Granger please me, and I can't say anything higher than that. It's superior music-making. It has strength, it has passion and tenderness. That's what makes it live. Donald's name, of course, is at once his trump card and his weak one. I can't imagine the lofty producers of Radio 3 ever broadcasting any of his lovely settings of Tennyson, Rossetti, Clare, Blake, Hardy, or Hermann Hesse. But maybe, as Donald says, that exposure will come. He has a lot of music to write still. But when he does eventually get to the Elysian fields, I'm sure he will immediately get dragged to the piano to join his old pal.